once you kind of get the ball rolling, the steps are simple. Maybe they're not easy to implement, but they're simple. Like, it's not rocket science at the end of the day. At that point in time, I realized, okay, I don't have enough time, and I'm now able to pivot my return on time to be higher. But now I need to focus on the shit that actually makes me more money per unit of time. I need to be focusing on the stuff that makes me more, and the stuff where I can add value rather than trade my time. The mindset is break down impossible things into smaller steps, and then just do the steps and don't worry about the rest.
Problems are what? Problems are profits!
Welcome to another episode of the Problems or Profits podcast. My name is Rebecca Lynn Matheson, aka the Canadian Cottage Girl, and I am joined by Adam JD Martin, who is taking over Matt McKeever's spot as co-host on this Problems or Profits podcast episode. So we have special guest James Fernandez in the house today. Welcome, James, to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Well, before we get right into it, I'm just going to cover a little bit of the philosophy of problems or profits and kind of what it means to me. And for me, it really means taking on anything in your business. And that's every little element and turning it from a challenge into something that can work well and make you a profit. So this is everything from you holding up your business or being the thing that limits your growth to taking on all of those little niche things in your day-to-day that will absolutely accelerate your business. So this philosophy, it's been a huge growth for me in my kind of pathway really as an entrepreneur. And really, I've seen the growth in this philosophy across all industries. So I'm very excited to have James on the podcast today to talk a little bit about himself, his kind of journey as an entrepreneur, and really dive deep into this topic of problems or profits. So what we're going to do to get started here is just start with some warm-up questions here for you, James. So first warm-up question is, what is the most expensive thing that you have ever broken?
So I kind of prepared for this question. I've seen you guys ask it a couple of times. To be honest, there's some, I hit a car in a parking lot and whatever else. And I think everyone's kind of done that stuff. But when I really thought about it, the most expensive thing that I've ever broken is myself. I have broken so many bones throughout the course of my life doing this stupid random shit that I always get myself into. And it puts myself out of commission. And maybe it sounds kind of stupid to say that the most expensive thing I've ever broken is myself. But realistically, I'm my biggest asset. Like I have to take care of myself in order to wealth generate at all. For now, at least, until things are fully passive. But even when they're fully passive, there's still someone that needs to see it, and right now that's still me. So that's my answer. Took me too long to think about that answer, but I think that's what I can give you.
Nice. On my episode, I just went with the car. Totally had ditched my Audi, and I was like, yeah, that's definitely the most expensive thing I've ever broken, but I certainly wasn't going as deep.
Yeah, when you put yourself out of commission, and we were just talking about just being fat lards in general and just eating and maybe not getting as much exercise as we want. But that's another aspect of it, right? In order to be at the peak of our business, at the peak of our game, we also need to be in our peak mental and physical state in order to perform, right? So that's, I think, the best answer I could give you.
Yeah, I have no question that when I'm eating right, sleeping right, and working out, those seem to be the pillars. 100%. I'm also doing the other little things correctly at those times as well. I'll be on time for every meeting. I'll be early almost to every meeting. I'll be making sure things don't slip through the cracks, attending those hard meetings, making those tough calls. And I think doing hard things and facing adversity, as well as just maintaining, is probably one of the secrets to success in the long term, right? Because it's pretty easy to do a sprint, right? It's pretty easy to just super sprint on something in the short term. But I think where real success is found is making sure that your long-term picture is also taken care of. And I think those are the life hacks, right? Keep your body, mind, spirit all in order. And that's what gives you that little bit extra during the day that sometimes you need as an entrepreneur, right?
Hell yeah. And even like you just said, like the consistency is the key. For quite a while now, my consistency has just been working too much, not getting enough sleep, not eating as well as I should have been. That has been my consistency. And that's not, I don't want to trade my health for wealth and then trade again all my wealth for all my health back, if that's even possible on the other end, right? So that's where I'm trying to pivot right now in my business, and make sure that the most expensive thing that I've not broken is also myself. I need to make sure that I'm at the top of my game.
I love that. Yeah. And it actually aligns. I'm revisiting a book right now called Own the Day, Own Your Life by Aubrey Marcus. And it talks exactly about this topic, James. And it's literally about how you sleep, how you work, how you learn, eat, train, play, everything, and really comprehensively breaks down like all of those things matter in your business. All of those things matter in your life. And if you're not only owning each individual element, then something's going to be off. Something's going to be falling apart and you're not going to be optimized. So I really love that you brought that up in terms of like what the most expensive thing is that you're broken, because it really is like irreplaceable you. Like you cannot progress forward in your business, in your life, if you're not taking care of yourself on all levels.
I just wrote that book down. I'll check out probably the synopsis of it, but awesome.
That book is tremendous. I've recommended it to a lot of people on our team, and I'll just read you the cover. So the cover reads, "Own the day, own your life. Optimized practices for waking, working, learning, eating, training, playing, sleeping, and of course, sex." And it's actually a really fantastic book that covers all those topics, in a really concise manner. And I found it to be extremely useful a few years ago when I was just getting into this whole idea that maybe everything is connected, right? And I think I was actually a late bloomer to this concept because of how I grew up, right? Like we played hard, traveled. And when I traveled, I played super hard. And in every other aspect of life, I played really hard as well. But I didn't understand that, all of this really is connected. Like you need to eat right, sleep right, do all the things. And then to bridge into another book we've recently read, Extreme Ownership, like discipline does equal freedom, right? If you do all these things properly, you can have the overeating, you can do the wine drinking, you can indulge in really exciting adventures and whatever else, but because you've put in the work, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, I love that.
Awesome. Well, next warm-up question here for you, James, is if you had $1 million and only 24 hours to use that $1 million before it disappears completely, what would you do with that $1 million?
I don't have any like investment plans for that $1 million because it's essentially wealth that's just not wealth. It's just blow money. Like it's gone in that period. So in 24 hours, you can't really travel too much. Like you're not going to really fully enjoy a place. So what I'd probably do is just rent out some crazy place, throw the biggest party I could possibly have with all my friends and family there, and then pay the COVID fines or whatever it is, how it goes. So.
That's awesome. Well, it's actually funny that you mention, throwing a party, because actually one of the former guests, Aaron, talked about the idea that he would spend it all on intangible things like potentially connections or whatever. And I think that if you threw the craziest party ever, you might find yourself running into some of those intangible benefits as well. So that's kind of cool. Different way to approach it, though. He said, I'd find the best room to get into, right? But it's interesting because you're just going to cheat and bring everybody to your room by having the best room.
Why do I have to go anywhere, man? I'm in my pajamas. It's all good.
Right. But, you're going to Gatsby the party, too. Just don't even show up.
Man, speaking of the intangibles though, like when I first started the whole real estate investing thing, like one of the things I really wanted was a Tesla, and I ended up getting the Model 3, as you know, and man, that car, back when pretty much nobody had that car, was a weird way to get into a room with people I had no business talking to.
Yeah.
because they wanted to know about the car or whatever else. So like, in a way, like, rather than it being this huge liability, which pretty much every vehicle is, and on the personal side of things, it ended up being this asset where I was able to talk to people I had no business talking to. Like, I had a duplex at that point, or not, like maybe like 5 units or something. And I had no business talking to people that had, I don't know, 200, 500 units. But they just wanted to talk to me about the car. And then we just ended up talking about other stuff just because of the car. So those intangibles, they're huge. They're insane.
Yeah, I've actually leveraged my Rolex collection in the exact same way. I mean, the number of really, really high quality conversations I've had because of owning these watches is it's got to be worth at least what I paid for each of the watch, each watch in the collection. And honestly, it's so cool how I think what most people are looking for is a foot in the door, right? Like they just want a reason to talk. And generally speaking, I think we're very social creatures. And that's why maybe COVID's so jarring to so many of us, right? Because it was such a weird reaction we took. But I also have a Tesla, obviously. And I completely resonate with that idea. I mean, I had a conversation just yesterday or the day before outside of the mansion, a guy walking by, hey man, is that your Tesla? And we might've had a 20-minute conversation out of the blue. Right. And this guy, otherwise, I mean, I probably wouldn't have talked to him. We would have just walked by each other and, who knows what comes of those. Maybe that's your next lender. Maybe that's your next business partner, right? Yeah. Maybe that's your next, who knows? Maybe it's just a buddy. Maybe you just have a beer, or maybe you just exchange 20 minutes worth of conversation, right? And I just think that's really cool, and I certainly resonate with that idea.
Yeah, there's a book that I read, How to Talk to Anyone, by Leslie Lowndes or something. I can't remember exactly, but one of the chapters was talking about a what's that type of thing as a conversation starter. Yeah. It doesn't matter kind of what it is, even if it's like a nice brooch or a necklace or a Rolex or a hat or whatever, like maybe you shave like half your face. I don't know. Whatever it is, but just something to get the conversation started, like the foot in the door, like you said. So it's wild, man. Like, I think you nailed it exactly. Even if it is only the 20-minute conversation, we're still craving that right now. Like, otherwise this Zoom call, face-to-face thing, this is as close as we're getting for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, which is unacceptable in my opinion. One thing that we did is actually this brand, right? Problems or profits. We, if you catch us in the street, there's probably an 80 to 90% chance we're wearing something on us that says that. And I've been stopped all over the place now, including, I was just in British Columbia the other day. I got stopped by several people who went, hey, like, what is that? Right. And then you get to stick them with a 20-minute conversation about, well, it's a mindset, right? It's about taking the challenges in your life and using that as part of what Dylan McLaughlin just referenced as a growth mindset on the podcast. And I think that's really important to explain to people. It's like, it's not actually about crusading for profits. That's actually a symptom of solving problems over time. And using your problems to build your skills and build your repertoire of resistance, right? And build your fortitude. So I think that's a really cool way too. It's just like you said, like a hat. It's so simple. And somebody might just stop us and go, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what does that mean? So it's really cool.
Absolutely. Well, next warm-up question here for you, James, and the last one before we get into the meat and potatoes of this is, why are you you?
Oh, man. I must have missed that in my research here. Okay. So I think there's a couple things. First of all, immigrant background. Came to Canada as an immigrant. I didn't really have any family here outside my immediate family, and was a bit of an outsider. My first name is an Indian name. It's Abai, but it's not phonetic. It's not easy to say when you read it. And that caused me a lot of problems when I was a kid. I was very small as well, like tiny freaking Indian boy. But I got picked on and bullied and made fun of and whatever else. And mainly because of my name and my accent. And obviously I don't have that accent anymore since I was only 5 when I came. But that was something that really drove me, because I had to explain my name to all like the new teachers, all the new kids, all the whatever. And it kind of became like a thing that pushed me to be so good at what I was doing, anything, soccer, school, volleyball, whatever, anything, that it would be them in my brain. This is how I kind of justified it. It would be them that was like stupid for not knowing how to say my name because they didn't know who I was. They should know who I was, like that kind of mentality. I don't know. That's how I justified it in my head when I was a kid. Like, yeah, I just wanted to be so good at whatever I was doing that you should know how to say my name, because if you don't, you're an idiot. Like, how do you not know who I am? And that was, I think, one of the biggest things that motivated me in general to be good at whatever I was doing. Anything, didn't really matter. We're knitting today, I'm going to be good at knitting. Doesn't matter. Whatever it is. And then, so that's one main thing. And then the other main thing is growing up without a lot of money. So whatever, again, like the immigrant background, backstory, just working hard. And back then, trading time for money in whatever way possible just to get money. So I worked like a lot of random labor jobs on the farm, like on the snow days when everyone's like, yeah, it's no school. I was out like shoveling people's driveways with my brother and whatever else, and just collecting money because I knew there was going to be a need for it. So that's, I guess, the two main things. Well, I guess it sums up into my immigrant background, and then just kind of having a name that isn't very popular here. And that those two things kind of motivated me to become good at whatever it was I was doing. That type of mindset.
That's awesome, dude. The struggle is real, but that's problems or profits, right? You get something thrown in your face like that, especially something so concrete, really, let's go with, as a name, right? And obviously today you've appeared even here with your screen name as James, right? So you did, I guess, just kind of morph your mindset around the whole thing. But you know, something like a name when you're a kid, you can't change. That's an impossibility, right? Like that's so you that it's impossible. That's your whole identity at that time, right? So that's a really cool way to turn a problem into a profit, right? It's just say, hey, these guys are making fun of me, and I'm going to use that as fuel. And I think that's a really sweet approach to life, right? And I think that perfectly captures the mindset.
So yeah, like the what makes you, just touch briefly on why I go by James now, rather than my first name, Abai. It's mainly because I started, like, for work and I was traveling a lot and whatever else. I had to explain my name a lot.
It's just easy.
It's just so much easier. Like, even when I was single and in a bar or whatever, and I go up to like a girl in a loud bar and we're talking, and she's like, "What's your name?" I'm like, "Abai." She's like, "How do you spell it?" I'm like, "Not gonna freaking help you. don't worry." But if I just say James, like, "Oh, hey James, how's it going?" You know, a little bit different. Yeah, that's kind of why. Like, it's just easy now. And there's a lot of, like, we can talk about that maybe some other time, but there's a lot of studies on like how that impacts your resume acceptance, how that impacts your Airbnb acceptance. There's a whole episode of being black while being on Airbnb that's really interesting to listen to. Yeah, there's all sorts of different things that drove me to just go by James. It's just clean and easy, but I don't let myself forget ever that Abai, which means fearless in Sanskrit, is still fully me as well.
That's sick. That's super sick.
I love that. I really do. And it's kind of cool, actually, how your name tied into what you made it when people didn't know your name or didn't know how to pronounce it and you had to explain it all the time. You were fearless in your pursuit in just absolutely taking down any challenge, like whether it be knitting or soccer or school. Like, you just were relentless in that, and I love it. It reminds me actually a lot of, like, if you guys have seen the whole like Michael Jordan series on Netflix with Michael literally going up to like coaches, and he had that like FU fuel where it's like, that's all I needed, and then he just like went for it. I love that so much, James. And one thing that I really would love to hear a little bit more about is just a kind of timeline overview of you as an entrepreneur and investor for those listeners out there who maybe are hearing your story for the first time. I'd love to just have you give a little overview as to kind of what you've been up to and why.
Sure. I kind of want to start like kind of at the beginning. I'll keep it brief though. But basically starting from being that young immigrant family without a lot of income, we were too proud to use any public assistance. That was never an option. It was always going to be, no, we're going to figure it out, and how. So I guess that's stage one of my life, where it's I'll call it time for money, and it's just where you're poor. And okay, what are you going to do? You're gonna work. You're gonna make money however you need to. So I think one of the biggest pivots in my mindset back then was when all my, like, it was a snow day. It was a big snow day. All my friends, we like called each other like, oh, what do you guys want to do? What do you guys want to do? And everyone's like, oh, let's like come over to my house and we'll watch TV or whatever else. And then my brother and I were like, this is a really good chance to just shovel some driveways and make some money. So we went out for that whole day. We shoveled, I think it was like 20 driveways. We were dead at the end of the day, but it was $20 a driveway. And we made more money in that day than I think my family made in a month or something. Like I can't remember the exact metrics, but it was an insane amount of money to us and to my family. And but then pivoting that into someone that's just said like, hey, would you clean my car at the same time too? Like I'll throw in an extra $5 or something. And then we were talking about that, like while we were just shoveling snow. And we're like, oh, we should just offer this as like another service. While we're here anyway, we'll just clean your car for an extra $5, no problem. Just brush off the car first, clean off the driveway. But then that transitioned to, we lived in a townhouse condo. We transitioned that into, we're going to set up contracts with all the people here. And granted, like contracts is a loose word. We were 10 and 11 years old. Just door knock and say like, every time it snows, we'll make sure that your car is clean before you go to work. And it was like $5 a clean or $20 a month. It was very cheap, like overall type of thing. I can't remember exactly, but we had like 10 or so contracts. And again, loosely term contracts. And that was an insane amount of money for us at the time. But setting that up, so that was again, like trading time for money in different ways. One thing that taught me is that while you've already made a sale, it's very easy to make an additional small sale. That was something that was really important to me. In that same vein of trading time for money, I took on a paper route. That was a big failure on my end. It made me realize that trading time for money always isn't, like, you need to be very selective, because that paper route, the amount of effort that it took and time and just general garbage that you had to deal with, it was not worth it. You're not making enough to make it worth it. So that was another lesson that I learned was like, you got to work harder, but also smarter. And trading time for money in that sense was very bad. And then moving on to the next time for money thing, it was working on a farm and landscaping. And at this point in time, I was like 15 to 17, somewhere in that range, saving up for university, that type of thing. And at that point, I decided to treat that trading time for money part of my life as also exercise. I was like, all right, I know I need to be fit for Air Cadets as an Air Cadets. For the sports that I'm playing, I was playing soccer, football, volleyball, swim team. I might as well get paid to exercise. So that's how I was treating it in my head. So that was like a kind of a pivot in time for money, where I was starting to multitask and learn that there's ways to do more with your time. Going forward into university, step two, I guess, of my brain and mindset was that I don't have enough time. Because as a kid, you kind of have infinite time. Like nothing really you don't have crazy commitments unless you have like one of those helicopter parents that just books your calendar, like Adam's calendar here. But like you kind of don't have anything to fucking do. So you monetize your time as best as possible if you can. But then you transition into school and adulthood and responsibilities. You don't have enough time. So I started trying to pivot into how can I still make money without having time. So that was where I started investing. I started doing things that were low time commitment and high money return. So focusing on the return on time rather than the return on money. So that was things like investing in stocks, flipping cars, motorcycles, ATVs, and boats. I like working with my hands and doing that stuff. One of the other things that came out around that time was an app called Turo. If you're familiar with Airbnb, Turo is sort of like that, but you rent out your car. And most of the time your car is just sitting in the driveway when you're not using it. So I was like, screw it, I'm just going to rent it out when I don't need it. Lots of my friends that were students also, they didn't have a car and they just needed to go get groceries or like pick up some heavy thing or whatever, I was like, all right, for 20-30 bucks, use my car, make sure it's filled up with gas after, and then bring it back and rent it all through the app so the insurance is covered and everything. But then my return on time now for that was infinite. I didn't spend any time really. It's like 2 minutes organizing it, and then I made 30 bucks. And I did that like multiple times a week. And then also at that point in time, I realized, okay, I don't have enough time, and I'm now able to pivot my return on time to be higher. But now I need to focus on the shit that actually makes me more money per unit of time. And that's when I started really thinking about investing in real estate and investing in the stock market in a different way, focusing on high value tasks, and then also transitioning out slowly of the return of dollar per unit time and rather just value for money. And actually Aaron, a really good friend of mine, Aaron Bay on Instagram, he just actually stopped doing coaching calls recently. And he was charging $300 an hour, which sounds like pretty high or whatever. If you kind of think of it from a different mindset, like I have to pay dollar per hour mindset, but the value that he was giving people was more than $300 for sure. But he recently cut that out because he didn't want to stay in that dollar per hour mindset. And I thought that was really valuable. Like I think that's where all of us are trying to get to in general. How much value can I create? And it's not time-based value. It's I just did this, and it's worth this in dollars. And if it took 1 minute or if it took 10 hours or it took a year, those are all different things. It's not time-based anymore. So focusing on those high-value tasks and like trying to get rid of distractions. So one of the things, I have a bunch of properties that I used to just walk around to and like check on things. If there's something that was like slightly broken or damaged, I'd grab the tools out of the car and fix it real quick. That type of stuff. Loose doorknob, tighten it up. I sold all my tools because it was just not the right mindset to be doing that shit. I need to be focusing on the stuff that makes me more, and the stuff where I can add value rather than trade my time. So moving forward, even beyond that, hiring a coach, making sure that I'm keeping myself accountable with KPIs that I've created for myself, lead and leg measures that I keep myself accountable to every day, every week, I should say. And then, just not thinking about dollar per hour, but rather value per dollar.
Yeah, I think it's interesting on the flip side of that conversation you just had. One of the things you said is, your good friend declined. He was just on the podcast, but he declined to do this hourly relationship for coaching. But on the other end of the conversation, you said, I just paid for coaching. And I think that is one of the more insightful things that might have gone over people's heads, because you shouldn't be coaching. However, if you can con somebody into coaching you and providing massive value for some nominal hourly rate, even if it's $300 an hour, that's probably a great thing to do. And I think that might be a little nuance in that conversation you just had that could just go over somebody's head. So I wanted to highlight that because I think that's a really interesting dichotomy, right? I don't think you want to be trading your time for money necessarily. You should be trading for value. I 100% agree with that. But I think there's a lot of people out there that are willing to sell themselves short. And if you can get all their knowledge for maybe $300 an hour, hell yeah, take the shot, right? I've declined so much coaching or whatever that people want to ask for on the similar premise that you're getting at. It's like, I'm probably solving a $50,000 problem. And I might be getting, $500 an hour for it. And I've done a couple of those calls, and that's what I realized. And then the other thing is, a lot of the time on the receiving end of this, if you're just new to the idea of coaching, or even potentially if you're a serial coach getter, there's this huge flaw with coaching from a lot of different perspectives. And that is, people just don't implement. right? And most of getting results is literally the implementation, right? Just fucking do it. And so I think that's a big thing that I get hung up on when I think about the idea of coaching people. It's like, it's really unfortunate when somebody doesn't implement. And I think if you're approaching it from the receiving end of coaching with the right mindset of like, hey, I'm going to go in here to extract value, and I'm willing to pay whatever your price is, $300, $500, $10,000. Cool. As long as I'm going in and I'm extracting, essentially as much or more than what I'm paying in money, then you should be able to solve huge problems for your business, right? And potentially make exponential leaps forward, which I think is a really cool concept. So glad you mentioned that. And I just wanted to point that little nuance out in what you said, right?
It was just one of the other avenues that I was trying to outsource. So as an example, like I sold my snowblower and my lawnmower, my shovels. I got rid of all of it. I don't do any of that stuff anymore. I like in my head, if it's there, like I feel like I want to do it. I can't just like let it be. But now I literally can't because I got rid of this stuff. So
I'm in the same boat. My neighbor cuts my grass for free because I don't know how to. I don't know how to. I just told him I don't have a lawnmower, dude. And I was like, if you're cool doing it, he loves doing it. He's like almost retired. His favorite thing to do is come home from work, cut the grass. So now I just supply him with his favorite beverage is Stella. I drop him off Stella's whenever I think about it, and he's happy as shit to do it. And guess what? I'm not spending an hour or whatever that looks like with that task. So I love that.
Yeah, so it was sort of in the same vein of thought, where I need to make sure that someone's holding me accountable in a different way that I can't hold myself accountable. Not that I've ever struggled with that, but the outside view, when you have someone looking at what you're doing, you hold yourself accountable as well in a different way. Like even in like quantum physics, whatever is being observed, the measurements change, right? So that's sort of the way that I was thinking about it, is like, all right, this is, it costs what it costs, whatever. But it's a level of accountability that I can't provide for myself. That's basically where it's coming from.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can definitely relate to that on so many levels. Like my background, James, as you know, is in fitness. And like I literally worked and traded time for money for a long period of time where I was coaching people on their health and fitness. And it's the same in real estate. It's the same in business. Like if you want to accomplish great things, if you want to get abs, if you want to like really get buff or whatever it is that your goal is, like go learn from somebody who's doing that thing. Like go learn from the person who has 300 units. If you want to build your portfolio, go learn from the person who's done a bunch of flips and just like leverage their knowledge so you don't have to go through the same sort of things. And it absolutely is that you can have somebody solve your $50,000 problem for $300. Like that is so valuable by just simply reaching out and connecting with others and keeping yourself accountable. Like first it has to start from like what your why is and what you're actually moving towards, and then go find the person who's doing that. Like I really want to highlight that.
Yeah. I mean, look at the problem of the abs thing. Imagine if you were seeking out abs, right? And you just go and attack the problem in what might look like the most simple and apparent way, which is, oh, I got to do sit-ups or something to work out my abs. And you go do 1,000,000 sit-ups. You're going to end those 1,000,000 sit-ups with no fucking abs. Right. Yeah. All you need to actually do is pay a coach or like go learn from somewhere. You don't necessarily even need to pay for it these days. Most of it's on YouTube for free.
Yep.
All you need to do is ask the question from somebody who knows it. And they're going to tell you, dude, all you got to do is cut that shit out of your diet. Like literally, that's probably what is preventing you from having abs. And then even if you want to really dial it and you want great abs, it's not going to be sit-ups. It's actually going to be heavy overhead work, right? And doing more compound movements. And you're going, oh my God, I never even thought about that. What do you mean a pull-up is building my abs, right? That's such a ridiculous concept. If you're just looking at it on the surface. And I think that example runs through a lot of what we do, right? If you want to be the best wholesaler, you do not go and perform the most extensive market analysis of every neighborhood and street in your city that's possible. No, you go ask your buyers, where the hell do you want to buy and what do you want to buy, right? Tell me everything you know about what you want to buy. And then all of a sudden you ask 1,000 people that and you've got your answer. That's where you need to look, right? So I think there's a lot of these lessons learned from leveraging other people's information. And I feel like you've done that in a great way, James. Like you haven't been collecting real estate for too long, right? But you've had like a fairly explosive growth. I would like it, considering what any kind of average would be, you've blown up.
I don't know. Like I didn't really have any real goals starting into this. It was like one property a year for the next 10 years and then I'll retire type of thing. That was like my mindset going into it. But then I realized like once you kind of get the ball rolling, the steps are simple. Maybe they're not easy to implement, but they're simple. Like it's not rocket science at the end of the day. BRRRR. It's pretty like there's like a few steps, you know, you just go through it. And maybe that's oversimplifying it a little bit, but that's sort of how I thought about it. For most of the time, like, so we had met at OREC 2019 and, yeah, that was, that weekend was basically life-changing moment for me where I was just like mind blown. Because I was just transitioning from not enough time to, how do I trade like value for time? That was my mindset back then, two years ago or so. I was just trying to figure that out. And like you and Troy were talking about Airbnb at that point, and that's when I really like. I'm sitting outside my house right now. The upstairs is the Airbnb unit. The downstairs is where I live, but the upstairs is bringing in like $2,800 a month, and I don't spend that a month on my personal stuff. Like it's ridiculous. And
house hacking.
What's my trade in time there? I don't know, 10 minutes. Like not even. I just like accept the reservation. So it's wild, man. And like, yeah, my first rental, I think, yeah, February 18th, 2020. So a year and a half ago, I guess. That's actually about to be sold to my tenants there. So they're fantastic people, and they should have a great rental property that they're going to be house hacking soon. So, yeah.
James, that's freaking awesome, dude. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Problems or Profits webinar today. And I was so happy to hijack my seat today in place of Matt McKeever, because I thought this was a cool conversation. And it's great to catch up with you. James and I are great friends. We like to eat and maybe perhaps enjoy too many beverages on occasion. But this is one of the most resourceful and intelligent people yet that I have to meet in this space. And I thought it was really cool for somebody like James who, you know, is kind of like an engineer, not necessarily like a super creative, you know, type of person. When you think about like an engineer, you get that halo effect, right? Like this person maybe isn't the most creative in the world. Like they're not out there, you know, for example, curating YouTube videos potentially or something like that. But, you know, for you to enter the space, and I think that's one of the things that's most interesting about your business that I've been able to observe just as a sort of silent observer is like you've been extremely resourceful. And I think maybe to wrap this up, that'd be my last point here. If you can touch on this, like, how do you think the engineering and more of a technical mindset and potentially like more of an efficiency mindset has helped you out in how you've run some of your projects and investments?
Sure. So yeah, my background, mechanical engineer and project management professional, PMP designation. Basically, when I approach most of these problems, is trying to break it down into something that is more manageable, because when like even for like our final exams and everything like that, I don't know if you'd maybe even know this, but as an example, we'd have 3 questions on our exam. It's a 3-hour exam. That's it.
Yeah.
So if you don't answer the question, that's at 0%. However, that's what you normally think. However, in these exams, part answers are acceptable. Your thought process is acceptable. The final answer is less important than the process. And that's something that I think was really valuable to me. When I got into this space, I was like, I'm just going to see what happens. I don't necessarily, like, I wasn't at a point in my life anymore where I needed the money or I needed the wealth or it wasn't about the money or anything. It was just like the end goal wasn't the goal. It was, I just want to do this because it seems like kind of cool. And that's kind of what I got addicted to is the process and the steps without really worrying too much about, am I going to be a bazillionaire by the time I'm 30 or 40 or whatever it is. It was this, I just know that these are lead measures to something good, and I'll just do them. And so that's sort of how it started. The main takeaway there for the mindset is break down impossible things into smaller steps, and then just do the steps and don't worry about the rest. If you're just doing the steps one thing at a time, it'll just work itself out somehow. It just eventually will. And then for the you asked about like efficiency and like I guess maybe explosive growth or whatever else. It really isn't anything more special than just trusting the process and knowing that once you've broken down that impossible thing into those steps and you're following the steps, don't worry about it. Like it'll just happen. Like lead measures as an example, contacting people, networking, getting your name and brand out there, making sure that your integrity and who you are is what people know about you, and they're willing to work with you based on that. At least that's something that I found really valuable. How we even met, kind of randomly, it was just a series of random steps that seemingly random steps, but it's just like, I know I just have to do these few things. It'll eventually work out. Even the first deal I ever did with Mike Nowicki, that was a wholesale deal. That was a deal that kind of everyone passed on. A lot of people had looked at that deal, and I at that point I was just like, you know what? What's the worst that can happen? I'm gonna leave 50 grand in the deal, and I did a deal. Like, okay, fine. But I didn't leave 50 grand in the deal. I pulled out a bunch of money from that deal and then selling it for a bunch more. And it's a matter of just trusting the steps. They will work when you're surrounded by the right people and have done the background work. So that's it.
Awesome, dude. Well, that's a wonderful way to wrap up this podcast, is just trust the process, right? I mean, the process is exactly as James said. Take this big, seemingly impossible problem, break it down into small steps, execute on those smaller steps in order of priority. And all of a sudden you're 75% of the way through an impossible thing. And then maybe you get to that one place where there is that hard thing that you don't know how to accomplish. And then guess what? You can tactically ask somebody that knows better how exactly to deal with that problem. And I think maybe just in closing words here, I think one of the challenges that really, really, really holds people back is they start asking questions about the impossible problems before they're anywhere near that point of execution. So we'll start asking questions about, well, how do we get our 7th mortgage, right? I'm just going to focus on the most basic of these types of thinking processes. Like, how do we get our 7th mortgage? Well, sir, do you have one? No. Okay, get one. Then you'll know a lot more about the process, and then you can start building your power team and building out your strategy for how to achieve the 7th, right? Because there will have to be strategy there. But when you're looking at this problem, that's a really big problem. Oh my God, there's a mortgage wall. Well, maybe there is, but you don't know that at all. In fact, you really don't. And then, James just shook his head. For any of you in the car right now driving, not watching this, James just shook his head. There's no mortgage wall. It doesn't exist. It's a myth. And so had you taken the time to get 50% of the way to that problem, you've got your 4 mortgages, you'll understand now, okay, shit, my income might hold me back, but I've got all these other resources, or whatever the situation is. And I think a lot of people get really hung on that looking at the impossible problem from so far away that it's so ambiguous that it looks terrifying, right? It's the shadow in the night. That could be easily explained by the tree, right? And you're like, oh, it's a tree. I know trees. Trees aren't even that dangerous, right? So I think like that is a big problem.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off there. I was just saying, like doing a little bit more research, maybe, or surrounding yourself with the right people to ask those tactical questions. And that's why, like, even I had called Matt, maybe it was like a year ago, and I was like, Matt, I will pay you literally whatever you want to answer my 15 questions in 15 minutes. And I don't even think he actually ended up charging me. I think I just ended up getting him Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. But he didn't end up charging me because I think he kind of understood where I was coming from. Is I just need help on this shit, man. Like, I need to move forward, and this is like the 15 minutes of time that's gonna help me. But it was tactical, critical, like, I need it today kind of answers, because I've gotten to this point and now I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So asking like those tactical questions, but also asking yourself, what am I procrastinating on? And I think I find that what I'm procrastinating on personally is stuff that I either don't know how to do or don't want to do.
Yeah.
And once I note those things down, I just write it down. What am I procrastinating? And then I see, okay, who can solve this? Not how can I solve this? And that's actually something I learned from Mina, who you've had on here before. Who, not how. And outsourcing that shit so that you're not wasting a day. And after OREC, I was literally counting my progress by the day. How is this day valuable? So at day 365 from OREC, I already had refied a property. I already had 5 units. I already had like another 7 lined up, like multiple properties lined up, because for 365 days, holding myself accountable day by day, it was every day matters, and that's 24 hours. So every minute matters now. You got to make sure that you're not wasting your time.
James, you're an absolute goddamn killer. Tell these people how they can follow you. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
No worries. Thanks for having me. You can find me on Instagram at james.ferns, or you can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn at James Fernandez.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you so much. And thank you guys all for tuning into another Problems or Profits webinar. And I think maybe on the next one, you get Matt back. So I hope you enjoyed me taking over. And James, I really enjoyed this conversation.
You bet, Adam. Always a pleasure. We'll go out for some wine soon.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, James. We'll see you on the next one.